That tells me that Mr. Jackson had taken oral lorazepam at some time prior to his demise. And I would add that the simulations that I asked Dr. Ornelas to perform did take into account the time that would have been required for the pills to be absorbed and achieve peak effects and to achieve the desired target concentration at the time of death.
Just can I ask, are we at PPET at this point?
Right.
Yes. Okay.
Quadruple pop.
All right. Now I want to discuss this document. I believe it's prepared by Dr. Schaefer. These are rejected scenarios. You recognize that document?
Yes, I do.
I want to refer you to scenario number 2. Propofol, 50 milligrams, and I'll let Dr. Schaefer's depiction that he explained and based upon your study by Kim, Kill, and White. I think it's previously been marked as Triple H. That scenario, what does that assume?
Well, it assumes that a bolus injection of 50 milligrams of propofol was injected over a period of, it looks like probably 30 to 60 seconds, very sort of a rapid bolus injection. And one would assume, again, I'm just speculating because I don't know what Dr. Schaefer was thinking when he drew the simulation, but I would assume he was making the assumption that given that Dr. Murray prepared a 1-to-1 mixture in a 10 cc syringe, that would mean 5 cc's of propofol, it's 10 milligrams per ml, so that would be 50 milligrams of propofol along with 5 mLs of 1% lidocaine, which would be again 10 milligrams per ml, so 50 milligrams. So you'd end up with a 10 cc syringe containing 5 cc's of propofol, 5 cc's of lidocaine, 50 milligrams of each.
And Dr. Schaefer assumed that based upon toxicology reports, that there had been 5 milliliters of lidocaine given to Michael Jackson. Is that correct?
Also speculation on this witness part. Dr. Schaefer testified to the scenario.
The objection is sustained. You may be asked, in Dr. Schaefer's report that he prepared in this case, did he say that the toxicology results at time of autopsy were consistent with 5 milliliters of lidocaine being given?
Yes, I believe he did.
And so that scenario basically comports with Dr. Schaefer's assumptions of 1-to-1, 5 milliliters of lidocaine, 10 cc syringe, but it's inconsistent with Dr. Murray's statement to the police, isn't it?
Well, it's inconsistent because Dr. Murray has repeatedly stated that he gave 25 milligrams, so he only gave 5 cc's from a syringe containing this 1-to-1 mixture.
So, along with Dr. Schaefer, do you reject this scenario?
I will reject it, yes.
Now, this third scenario involving 100 milligrams of propofol. That's, I've got another exhibit I'd like to mark as QQQQ. 4 cubes.
Go back.
If we take that third scenario that he has rejected and referring to diagram quadruple Q, that involves 100 milligrams in a bolus dose to Michael Jackson, correct?
Yes.
Now, that is inconsistent with Dr. Schaefer's assumption that 5 milligrams of lidocaine was given, isn't it?
Yes, that would assume that the entire 10 cc syringe contained propofol because it's 10 milligrams per milliliter. It's also inconsistent with the fact that Mr. Jackson always insisted on having what he referred to as anti-burn, which is the local anesthetic lidocaine, because propofol given in a 10 milligram injection like that through a small vein as he was receiving his intravenous would cause tremendous burning discomfort. And I think for that reason it is not logical.
So that the 100 milligrams of propofol with 5 milliliters of lidocaine would not fit into a 10 cc syringe, would it?
Absolutely not.
That's a double negative. Could we clarify it, please?
Would it fit into a 10 cc syringe?
Absolutely not. You can get about 12 cc's maximal in a 10 cc syringe.
Now we've got 3 scenarios on the bottom of this diagram that involve multiple doses, multiple injections of propofol over various times. I'd like to go through these individually with you. Referring to what's previously been marked as defendant's triple I, that shows Dr. Murray giving 6 injections of 50 milligrams each.
That's what it suggests.
I doubt that 5 milligrams of lidocaine would have to be given with each of these, would it?
Well, presumably, if you're talking about a 1-to-1 ratio, yes. So that would result in tremendous amount of lidocaine.
Would that involve filling a 10 cc syringe completely full 6 different times?
It would be quite a challenge to accomplish that in a 5 to 10 minute interval. He would be having to work extremely fast, and I doubt that he'd have time to accomplish that. I don't know how skilled he is in drawing up, but as suggested earlier, drawing propofol out of a glass ampule, as I'll show later, requires some effort, and I'm not sure I'd be able to accomplish that. It would be a challenge.
Now, we've never made that contention, have we?
No.
And it's not even a rational contention to be made, is it?
Well, it would mean putting Michael Jackson at deep sedation or even approaching unconsciousness, waiting until he barely wakes up, and then slamming him down again repeatedly. I don't understand the rationale for the simulation.
We've also got self-injections. These are 100 milligrams each. These are self-injections by Michael Jackson. Now, is this scenario that Dr. Schaefer came up with, would you just describe this as just plain ludicrous?
Again, we've talked earlier about the difficulty in drawing up even 5 cc's. To have a patient who's somewhat sedated under the effects of drugs, drawing up at one time, it may be conceivable. Drawing it up 6 times over that period of time, 2 hours, is inconceivable, yes. He would be knocking himself out, waking up, figuring out how to draw it up again, and then whacking in another 10 cc dose, and he'd probably be asleep before he got all 10 cc's in. So in my world, this is not a very realistic possibility, or not realistic at all.
How about self-injecting 50 milligrams each?
That's only slightly less absurd.
I mean, would that include lidocaine also in that scenario?
Well, if you assume there was a 1-to-1 ratio, yes, it would include giving 300 milligrams of lidocaine, which is, again, a huge dose and could be just toxic of itself.
You would agree that that scenario is absurd also?
Slightly less absurd than the previous one, but yes.
I want to return to the first scenario. That scenario, Dr. He's 25. Now, that one's not quite as absurd, is it?
No, it's 25 milligrams, as we said earlier. That's a minimal sedation dose of propofol.
Now, I want to refer you to previously marked Exhibit Triple G to show Dr. Schaefer's full-scale drawing. Now, that depicts a 25 milligram bolus dose, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And that 25, well, it's a bolus dose. Why would a doctor, well, that doesn't depict a dose over 3 to 5 minutes, does it?
No, that depicts giving a presumably rapid bolus injection over typically 30 seconds or thereabouts.
Now, would Michael Jackson be capable of doing that kind of a dose? Sustained. Would a person who had an IV in place and was conscious be capable of injecting the bolus of 25 milligrams of propofol?
That's a big speculation.
Overruled on those grounds. You may answer.
Yes, of course.
And in the event that the person did bolus dose 25 milligrams, that would immediately shoot propofol level up to the numbers that we have there on that diagram?
Well, Dr. Schaefer on this diagram shows it going up to about 5.5 or 6 micrograms per ml. It seems a little bit higher than I would have predicted, closer to 4.5 at peak. But again, it's dependent on how quickly the injection is completed. So if it's in 15 seconds, it's going to go perhaps to this level. If it's 30 or 60 seconds, it'll be more you'll have a little lower peak. So it's not unreasonable. I think it's reasonably depicts what I would expect to see in the plasma.
In this diagram, Dr. Schaefer shows it going up to 6.
Yes.
But in his, you recall reading his report that was written on this case where he said the 25 milligram dose would only go to 4?
Yes.
Which is correct? Do you agree with the 6 that he's got depicted here, or the 4 that he said in his report?
I think,
Well, it seems that that's the only choice.
Sustained. What would you say would be the accurate number that 4 milligrams or 25 milligrams would go to?
I think both could be accurate. It just depends on the speed with which it's injected. If you give it over 15 seconds, it could be 6. If you give it over 30 seconds, it could be 4. So it's all dependent on the speed at which you inject it.
Now, why is it written in the insert that that should be given over 3 to 5 minutes?
Well, the package insert for propofol, when used for max sedation, conscious sedation, suggests giving the initial dose of 0.5 milligrams per kilogram, which in Mr. Jackson would be 31 milligrams, over 3 to 5 minutes, to avoid any possibility of producing any acute respiratory
profound effects like unconsciousness. It's just a safety mechanism to avoid initially pushing a patient into deep sedation or